Welcome to AI Assembled, the top AI news for small business. I'm Chris Doelle, and each week I bring you the most important AI developments that can transform your business. Let's dive into this week's top stories.
This is AI Assembled for April 13th, 2026. This week, the AI story got much bigger than chatbots. The headline is not just better answers on your phone. The headline is that the industry is reorganizing around industrial-scale compute, managed agents, cyber defense, and new business models that assume AI is no longer a feature. It is infrastructure. Start with Meta. On April 9th, Meta launched Muse Spark, the first model from Meta Superintelligence Labs. Meta says the model is small and fast by design, but strong enough for multimodal reasoning, visual understanding, tool use, and parallel subagents. In plain English, Meta is trying to turn Meta AI from a chatbot into a real assistant that can split up work, look at the world through images, compare options, plan trips, help with shopping, and eventually do all of that across WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, Messenger, and AI glasses. That matters for two reasons. First, Meta is finally showing its hand after a messy year in AI. Second, this launch is clearly aimed at consumer scale. OpenAI and Anthropic have dominated the conversation around premium reasoning models. Meta wants to own the everyday layer, the assistant millions of people use across social, messaging, commerce, and wearables. But the real tell came one day earlier in the infrastructure. CoreWeave announced an expanded $21 billion AI cloud agreement with Meta running through December 2032. Not xAI, Meta. That deal gives Meta dedicated capacity across multiple sites, including early deployments of NVIDIA's Vera Rubin platform. Think about that for a second. On one side, a splashy new model announcement. On the other, a 7-year, $21 billion compute commitment just to keep the machine fed. That is the clearest signal this week that frontier AI is becoming an industrial supply chain. If your model ambitions are serious, you do not just need talent and product ideas. You need power, chips, cloud contracts, and long-term guaranteed capacity. And Meta was not the only company moving in that direction. Reuters reported that Broadcom signed a long-term deal with Google to develop future custom AI chips, and that Anthropic secured access to roughly 3.5 gigawatts of AI computing capacity built on Google's processors starting in 2027. 3.5 gigawatts. That is not a software startup metric. That is utility-scale language. So, part one of this week's story is simple. The AI race is no longer just model versus model. It is stack versus stack.
Now let's talk agents, because this may be the week the phrase AI agent stopped sounding like a demo and started sounding like a product category. Anthropic's official docs now position Claude managed agents as a pre-built, configurable agent harness that runs on Anthropic managed infrastructure. Translation: instead of spending months building your own execution layer, sandboxes, state management, permissions, orchestration, retries, checkpointing, you define the job, the tools, and the guardrails, and Anthropic hosts the machinery. That might sound technical, but the business implication is huge. The hard part of shipping agents was never just prompting the model. The hard part was everything around the model. Managed agents compresses that gap between prototype and production. If you're a software company, this means you can move from "we have an agent idea" to "we have an agent in customers' hands" a lot faster. Perplexity pushed the same theme from the startup angle with its new billion-dollar build competition. The pitch is almost absurdly simple. Use Perplexity Computer as the primary tool to design, validate, and ship a startup with a credible path to a $1 billion valuation in 8 weeks. Up to 3 winners can get up to $1 million in seed funding from the Perplexity Fund, plus up to $1 million in Perplexity computer credits. Whether or not anyone actually builds a billion-dollar company in 8 weeks is almost beside the point. The real message is that the new startup stack is changing. Perplexity is saying the interface for company creation is becoming agentic. Research, validation, product iteration, outreach, operations, all compressed. Then there is Deerflow, ByteDance's open-source super agent harness that has been gaining traction since version 2 launched at the end of February. Deerflow orchestrates subagents, memory, sandboxes, and skills for long-running workflows. That means this week's agent story is happening at both ends of the market: closed, managed infrastructure from Anthropic for enterprises, and powerful open-source orchestration from ByteDance for builders who want control. Now add one more layer: XAI. The sourcing here is weaker than on the Meta and Anthropic stories, so take this as a claimed development rather than a fully verified launch announcement. According to public posts and secondary reporting, XAI's Colossus 2 cluster is now training multiple next-generation models at once. If that holds up, the strategic point is obvious. The biggest labs are no longer training one flagship model in a neat sequence.
They are training portfolios, reasoning models, multimodal systems, image systems, giant variants, all in parallel because the market now rewards constant iteration. So part 2 of the story is this: agents are getting easier to deploy, open source is getting better at orchestration, and the major labs are turning model development into parallelized manufacturing.
Now for the most important and most sobering story of the week. Anthropic's Claude Mythos Preview. Anthropic says Mythos Preview is its most capable frontier model yet, especially for coding, software engineering, research, and agentic tasks. But the company is not making it generally available. Instead, it is restricting access through Project Glasswing, a defensive cybersecurity initiative involving partners including AWS, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Cisco, CrowdStrike, JP Morgan, NVIDIA, and Palo Alto Networks. Why the restriction? Anthropic says the model's cybersecurity capabilities have jumped far enough that the same skills useful for finding and fixing vulnerabilities could also be used to design sophisticated exploits. In other words, this is one of the clearest signs yet that frontier AI labs now believe some models are dual-use enough to require selective deployment. Not because they are magical, because they are operationally dangerous in the wrong hands. If that sounds abstract, here's the practical version. AI has crossed a threshold where the same system that can help secure critical infrastructure can also potentially accelerate offensive capability. That is a very different world from "write me a better marketing email." And while Anthropic was ring-fencing its most powerful cyber model, Jeff Bezos's Project Prometheus was pointing in another direction entirely. Reuters reported that Bezos is in early discussions to raise $100 billion for a new fund to acquire manufacturing companies and use AI to drive and speed automation, while Project Prometheus itself is tied to AI for engineering and manufacturing. This is the industrial AI play in its purest form. Not AI as a co-pilot for office work, but AI as the operating layer for factories, aerospace, chips, and physical systems. Put all of this together, and the pattern becomes hard to miss. Meta wants the everyday assistant. Anthropic wants managed agents in production and restricted frontier cyber systems in defense. Perplexity wants to turn AI into a startup building engine. ByteDance wants open-source agent infrastructure everywhere. XAI wants sheer training scale. Bezos wants AI to rewire manufacturing. That is not one market. That is the emergence of a full economic layer. So, what should a small or mid-sized business do this week? Here is your 5-step action plan. Step 1. Separate AI experiments into 3 buckets: assistant tools, agent tools, and infrastructure dependencies. If you treat them all the same, you will underinvest in the systems that matter most. Step 2. Identify one workflow that is painful enough for an agent, not just a chatbot. Think customer onboarding, bug triage, proposal generation, competitive research, or internal reporting. Then test whether a managed system like Claude Managed Agents could replace your custom duct tape. Step 3. Review vendor concentration. If the biggest labs are locking up chips, cloud, and power years in advance, your own AI roadmap needs backup plans. Ask every vendor what happens if their compute costs spike or capacity tightens. Step 4. Update your security posture. Mythos and Glasswing are reminders that AI is now a cyber issue, not just a productivity issue. Review who can deploy models, what code they can touch, and what systems they can access. Step 5. Keep one eye on industrial AI, even if you are not in manufacturing. The companies that learn to connect AI to real-world operations, logistics, procurement, maintenance, support, compliance, are going to build a moat that prompt engineering alone will never deliver. Next episode, April 20th. Because at this pace, 1 week is now enough time for the whole industry to change shape. This is AI Assembled. Stay sharp.
That's it for this week's AI Assembled, the top AI news for small business. If you found this valuable, share it with a fellow business owner. If you want a hands-on group that you can work with on your specific AI needs, consider joining Business Success Academy at freshmediaworks.com/BSA. Until next week, keep innovating and keep it real.